Alright, welcome to Adobe Illustrator tutorial number 1. We're going to be looking at ways of manipulating rasterized images and changing them into vector images and creating copies and modifying the shapes, lines, and text. I've already opened Illustrator, and you can see you have some options of either opening existing files or creating a new document. We're going to choose New Document, and we've already chosen the horizontal orientation and also the print setting, and then hit Create. In order to have everything centered in the in your easel, you can hit View and Fit Artboard in Window. We have layers that have come up automatically. We can turn those off and on in the panel by going to Window and clicking on Layers, or going back, turn it back on by clicking on it. And you see that layer 1 here corresponds to this first screen. So our first operation is going to be to bring a new graphic into this artboard, and so we're going to place this Nike PNG here on the artboard. You can drag it wherever you want. It's going to start from the upper left corner, and if you click one more time, it will open the graphic. Now you can see that I have the selection tool selected, and with that tool I can drag this item anywhere I want in the screen, and I can also scale it. So if I want to preserve the proportions of height to width, all I have to do is hold the Shift key and grab that little anchor and pull it down to wherever I want it. Okay, so I'm going to start another layer right here, create a new layer with this little icon on the right. You can see I have an empty layer here, and if I were to toggle off this first layer, you can see that now I have a blank screen again. Alright, let's copy this image, and as in other programs, really all you have to do is go up to the Edit menu, hit Copy, or on a PC it's Control-C, and to paste it, go to the Edit and hit Paste, and that gives you a perfect copy. Again, now we have two raster images. Now I'd like to send this selected image to this second layer. Right now both of those items are on this first layer. So in order to do that, I could go to Object, Arrange, and Send to Current Layer. I need to select this layer that I want to send it to, and then that object appears on this second layer. Another useful feature is that the bounding box corresponds to the color coding in the layer window. So if I click on the lower rasterized image, it's in layer 1, which is blue. If I click on the upper right raster image, it is in red. Okay, now what we're trying to do is show a comparison between the raster graphic kind of scheme and vector graphics. So we're going to change one of our raster graphics into a vector graphic. The first graphic we will lock by simply hitting the little lock key that appears next to the eye on the layer row, and by double clicking the name we can change that, just to keep track of our assets, to raster, and then hit return. Now the other one I'll double click and I'm going to name vector. I haven't made it a vector yet, but I know that it will be a vector shortly, so I'm going to name that file. Okay, so back to selecting the raster file that's in the second image here, all we have to do in order to change it into a vector type file, which is a mathematically defined modality, is go up to the menu here and hit Image Trace. And it has already been changed with that one operation into a pretty darn good vector image that actually will maintain resolution throughout various scaling operations. So for example, let's do a little comparison here. If I were to take this zoom tool and click on the original raster image, you can see that as I zoom into it, I lose resolution, that these are individual pixels that are defining those edges. If I hit Alt, and you can see that my magnifying glass cursor turns into a negative, then I can zoom back out, or alternatively I could just go to View and fit the artboard in the window again. While we still have the magnifying glass, let's zoom in on the other image, which is now a vector, and watch how beautifully this scales. There is no loss of resolution because these lines are now mathematically defined. Again, I'll back out. Now we do have a bit of a problem. You can see that there's curves on these various letter forms that aren't in the original graphic. Let's look at this. So if we were to zoom in on, for example, the top of the K in the original raster image, it's a hard corner, even though we're losing resolution with the pixelation there. On the other hand, if we look at the letter K here on the vector graphic, we're getting some rounding. So how can we fix that? Okay, in order to fix that rounding and make it square like the original raster image, the best thing to do is to go to this panel here, which is the image trace panel, and it gives you a whole bunch more options for adjusting your trace. Now right now you can see that we have a whole lot of different options here. We're going to go down to these advanced sliders, paths, and corners, and watch what happens when I move the path towards the right and move the corners all the way over to the 100%. You can see that those corners are now very sharp. Let me show you that again. If I pull the corners back, especially to the midpoint, you can see how these corners are rounded. If I push it over to 100%, they straighten out. So that's a really powerful feature. We're going to fit the artboard in the window again, and we can close out of this now. But the thing that we want to remember before we leave the tracing result, or the tracing operation, is while this is still selected, we want to hit the expand button right here. And what does that do? That traces and gives control points and anchor points all the way around this graphic. Okay, while I'm thinking about this, let's also change the names of these so that they're correct. This should be raster, the blue one. Okay, so what I'd like to do is select this graphic and ungroup it. Now with this, once you've hit that ungroup command, we could regroup it, but right now we're ungrouped, which means that all of these entities are adjustable as individual entities. So I'm going to use a different selection tool, which is the direct selection tool, which is here. and you can see that each of these is a selectable object. So let's play with this a little bit. If I were to come down to click outside of the box and then click just on the swoop, you can see that the swoop has been selected as an individual object. Now I could play with that a little bit. I could change its color. Use the pull down to select a different color, like say orange. We could easily change that color. Or let's say I wanted to completely change one of these letters. Click outside of the box and click just one of the letters, and you can see that these are infinitely adjustable in and of themselves as individual entities. So let's just try changing a couple of things about the letter N. There's a lot of different options, but one easy thing to do is to go to the pen tool and highlight it, and then grab one of these little anchor points and just pull, and you can see that the entire outline is going to follow wherever you pull that point. Now if you don't like that, you can just hit Control Z a couple times. I'm going to press it Control Z a third time, and it will return to its original location. So that's it for now. Just play with these different tools and see if you can efficiently move from raster images into vector images using the image trace tool.